Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the second webinar on the Innovation Procurement Hubs program with a special focus on the Ecosystem Mapping Survey. My name is Yanis Orbas. I'm a principal at Boston Consulting Group in Athens, and I'm leading the day-to-day effort on this program, working in close collaboration and partnership with the European Commission and ISMEA. The purpose of today's session is to give you a clear understanding of the ecosystem mapping survey that we have launched, what it is, why your input matters, and how to complete it. We'll start by giving you a very brief overview of the Innovation Procurement Hubs program for those of you who missed our first webinar. Then we'll explain the purpose of the survey and describe the types of information we are mapping with it. We will also explain how you can categorize your organization or role so that the survey is best adapted to your activities and mandate. Finally, we will walk you through the structure of the survey and share a live demonstration of how it works. And of course, we have left plenty of time at the end to answer any questions you may have. So let's begin by looking at the program and the impact we aim to create together with you. Public administrations across the European Economic Area are increasingly eager to utilize innovation procurement to stimulate economic growth and increase the quality of public services. However, bringing together all the available guidance, policies, best practices, methodologies, and toolkits operationally is often far from straightforward. That's exactly why this program is here to address. The Innovation Procurement Hubs program is a practical, hands-on support initiative aimed at helping public administrations transform public procurement into an engine of innovation and growth by setting up or enhancing their own innovation procurement hubs. Our goal is to support public buyers and policy leads in contextualizing the necessary tools and practices in a way that meets their particular needs and addresses their particular pain points. And we're doing that through four key elements. First, we're building an innovation procurement ecosystem map to codify who's doing what across Europe, what they're struggling with, what they're doing well, and how they can better connect with each other. And this is why we're discussing the survey today. The survey is a central part of this mapping. Second, we're offering direct support for public administrations that want to set up or strengthen their hubs in the form of consulting packages, peer learning exchanges, and guidelines, including tested replicable models for such hubs. Third, we are establishing a community of practice, a living network where stakeholders on the demand side of innovation procurement can connect, exchange, and learn from one another. And finally, we're designing the strategy for a co-publishing space, which is a digital platform that will allow public buyers to communicate innovation needs early, engage suppliers across borders, and help shape a more collaborative innovation ecosystem. Together, these four elements aim to unlock real and lasting impact, both for administrations and suppliers. For public administrations, this means increased innovation uptake, better service quality, and stronger alignment on innovation needs across geographies. For suppliers, especially startups and SMEs, the program will help lower barriers to participation, improve access to public tenders, and enhance their proximity to other ecosystem players. Now that we have covered in a brief overview the goals and scope of the program, it's time to turn to what we want to focus today, and one of the most important tools we are using to shape the program, the Ecosystem Mapping Survey. This program is fundamentally about strengthening the ecosystem, the innovation procurement ecosystem in Europe. And to achieve this goal, we need to understand how to support you effectively. And this is why we asked you to fill in this survey. Doing so enables us to codify the current status of innovation procurement across geographies and sectors and uncover potential stakeholder connections, to document the post-pressing barriers blocking the way to successful innovation procurement and also start digging for the root causes behind these barriers, to identify the most relevant and replicable best practices that can address challenges in different contexts, and of course, to design support packages tailored to the particular needs of your organizations. Of course, we are doing our research on the side. We are reviewing the available literature and we're documenting all the available insights that are already available. This research, however, can only get us so far. We need to better understand what matters to you, not in an aggregated statistical way, but in a way that will allow us to customize our support to the specific framework, constraints, priorities, and challenges of your operational environment, while at the same time being able to understand what successful models you could adopt in an effective way, even if they come from contexts that are not entirely the same as yours. This is why we're asking you to fill in the survey, and this is why it is so important to have as many inputs as possible. We have, of course, talked about why the survey matters. Now it's time to take a closer look at what kinds of data it collects. So we are using the survey to understand how innovation procurement really functions today across Europe and where we need to focus to improve it, to uplift it. To do that, we are collecting insights on 5 key dimensions, each helping us build a clearer picture of what's happening on the ground and where support is most needed. We start by looking at how your organizations are set up. What is your structure, your mandate, and your geographical reach? We want to clarify the roles of the various entities across the ecosystem, from procurement agencies to innovation procurement hubs, competence centers, funding bodies, accelerators, and other actors, their particular focus and their maturity in innovation procurement. This allows us to identify where important pieces may be missing in different regions or sectors. We then focus on pain points and blockers that hinder the effective and efficient conduct of innovation procurement. We are aware that many stakeholders face challenges, whether these relate to budget constraints, resistance to change, legal ambiguity, risk aversion, or other aspects of procurement. This section of the survey is about giving you the opportunity to outline what does not work for you, so we can work collectively to resolve the issues. Of course, we're not focusing on your challenges. We also want to know what's going well. We are trying to capture insights on organizational performance and impact and identify the kinds and types of organizations, setups, and characteristics that enable this kind of impact. This will serve as our, so let's call it entry point for identifying the most relevant best practices and replicable models. If you will, the success stories we want to spotlight and share across the wider community, but most importantly, the examples we want to distill and tailor across the European Economic Area. The survey also looks at digital readiness, public procurement in general, and innovation procurement in particular, increasingly rely on digital tools, whether for early market engagement, publishing challenges, or collaborating across borders. And we want to understand where these tools are already in place and where there are still gaps in access, in usability, or in adoption. Finally, we want to assess who is ready and willing to engage with the program, the Innovation Procurement Hubs program, more substantially. Such engagement includes not only joining the community in practice, but most crucially, participating in peer learning exchanges, acting in guide or mentor roles, or expressing interest in receiving the tailored consulting support that we are designing right now. Of course, the important thing to remember when filling in the survey and all the questions across these 5 dimensions is that there is no right or wrong answer. What matters for us in you filling in the survey is that you give us a realistic view of where things stand and what you need most. Your responses are essentially the foundation for everything that comes next, whether it's shaping the tailored support packages, sharing relevant examples, or building meaningful connections across the ecosystem, right? And learning from one another. Of course, to provide the optimal input, you first need to know where your organization fits. So next, we will explain the different stakeholders categories in the survey. This will help you perceive how best to categorize your organization and calibrate the focus of the survey to best match your role, your mandate, and your activities. So where do you fit? One of the first things you will be asked in the survey is to identify the type of organization you represent. Now, we know that many of you work in complex environments and that your role may not fit neatly into a single box, and that's completely fine. The goal here isn't to oversimplify, but rather to group similar actors and roles in a way that helps us understand how the ecosystem functions as a whole and where similarities may be useful to apply common approaches and practices. To make this easier, we have broken down the innovation procurement landscape into 4 main stakeholder categories based on their overarching role in the ecosystem, plus a 5th category for individual experts. So let me walk you through each one. We start with what we call the innovation procurement operational drivers. In the survey, you will find those referred to as innovation procurement hubs and programs. These are the actors who run innovation procurement initiatives directly and test innovative solutions in real settings. This includes innovation procurement hubs, incubators, living labs, and consortium-based or hybrid hubs that bring together multiple actors to co-develop and test solutions. If your organization and your teams are involved in actually launching and implementing innovation challenges, managing pilot phases, or working with suppliers to co-create, test, or validate innovative services or products, you likely fall into this group. The second group is what we call innovation procurement connectivity drivers. You will find this in the survey referred to as ecosystem enablers. These are the organizations that don't run challenges themselves, but support others to do so more effectively by fostering connections, knowledge sharing, and communication of innovation challenges. You might, for instance, run an innovation challenge platform that helps public buyers publish calls and attract suppliers. Or maybe you work at a competence center offering legal advice, capacity building, or guidance on procurement design. You might even be part of an existing community of practice or act as an amplifier, that is, an organization acting as a connection platform for various actors in the ecosystem. If your role is focused on enabling others, sharing knowledge, or creating spaces for collaboration, then this is probably where you belong. The third group is public demand drivers. These are essentially the public buyers at national, regional, or local level. They act as the launching customers and the authorities that define procurement needs and priorities. So if you're working in a ministry, a regional authority, or a municipality, or if you are part of a national procurement agency and your role involves identifying public needs and translating them into public procurement policies, requirements, and requests, you are part of this category. In other words, if you are the ones shaping the demand side of the innovation procurement landscape, defining priorities, structuring needs, taking decisions on what gets procured and how, this is where you belong. The fourth category focuses on what we call innovation procurement sustainability drivers. In the survey, this category is referred to as the supporting ecosystem. These are the stakeholders who support innovation, not through procurement itself, but by providing the funding, advice, or coordination needed to keep innovation moving. This could be a funding agency that offers grants or investment for innovation procurement projects. It could be a GovTech program working to bring startups and government closer together. Or it could be a market or an industry association that advocates for policy changes, right? So if your organization plays an advisory, enabling, or financing role behind the scenes, you likely fall into this category. Finally, we also want to capture the insights of key individuals, which means people whose experience cuts across different categories. So it's about professionals who have worked in multiple roles or who bring a unique institutional memory to this space. So maybe you've worked in a procurement agency before and now you lead a competence center. Maybe you've supported both buyers and suppliers at different stages of your career. If your personal experience spans different angles of innovation procurement and you're participating in an individual capacity rather than as a representative of your organization, you will fall within this category. Now, you might be thinking, what if my organization fits into more than one of these categories, right? What if it fulfills the roles and mandates of many of the entities presented here, even across different categories? And that's a fair question, and it's one we hear often. So if your organization plays multiple roles from the ones you see here, for example, you're both running a hub and you're acting also as a national competence center, then we recommend, if possible, to have your competent colleagues fill the survey under each different role. This way, we will not only be able to capture the full perspective of your operation and activities, but we will also be able to identify the specific needs, practices, and challenges relevant to different units and roles within the organization. Do not worry about providing multiple inputs. It will not be confusing to us as long as your responses point to the same overarching entity. We will be able to consolidate them and develop a holistic view across your organization. That's our job. Now, if providing multiple relevant responses is not feasible for whatever reason, then we recommend that you focus on the primary function in the context of innovation procurement. So where does your organization place the most emphasis today? What's the main value you're bringing to the innovation procurement ecosystem? That's usually the best indicator of where you should position yourself in the survey if providing multiple responses for different roles in your organization is not possible. This will ensure that your input is interpreted correctly and that we support, the support we provide down the line is focused on what matters most for you in your real world context. Now, let me make this point again. There are no answers, wrong answers here. There are no answers that may, let's say, confuse us or give a wrong perception. The categories that I have just presented are designed to help us group insights in a way that's meaningful. That being said, we know that no two organizations are exactly the same, right? And that innovation procurement often happens in blended and evolving ways. We'll be looking at your input, not just in terms of what category your organization falls under, but also in terms of what kind of activities, experiences, and needs you have. So even if you're not entirely sure where to place yourself, just give us your best take, and we'll make sure it's reflected in how the results are interpreted, of course, in alignment with you. So now that we've clarified the stakeholder categories and how to identify your place in the ecosystem, I want us to move on to the survey itself. We'll walk you through the survey to give you a sense of what it looks like, how it works, and how to complete it step by step. For this, I will hand over to my colleague, Pedra Surpi, who is our mapping survey coordinator in the program team and who will guide you through. Over to you, Fedra.
Thank you, Yanis. Good morning, everyone. I'm Fedra Surpi, and I'm a consultant with BCG, leading the coordination of the Innovation Procurement Hubs Mapping Survey. The goal of this step-by-step walkthrough is simple: to show you exactly how to navigate the survey, how the questions work, and what kind of information we're asking for, and where some of the logic or structure might change depending on your answers. This is a tailored survey, which means that not everyone will see the same questions. The content adapts based on your organization and its role in the innovation procurement ecosystem. The walkthrough is designed to provide clarity on the what's and the how's of the survey before you start. Of course, if anything remains unclear, you can submit your questions through the Zoom's functionality of Q&A, and we will address them during the dedicated Q&A part at the end of this walkthrough. We will also revisit specific parts of the survey as needed. So let's begin. Before we dive into any questions, you'll land on a short welcome screen that sets the context. In this section, you'll see a summary of the survey, of what the survey is about, what kind of value your answers will generate, and how your data will be handled securely, confidentially, and used to improve the innovation procurement ecosystem. It also notes the estimated time, which will be approximately 10 to 15 minutes, depending on your role and your activities. Once you click Next, you're into the survey itself. The first field you'll see is your Community of Practice Identification Number. This is a unique code you received by email when you subscribed to the Public Buyers Community platform. It's your confirmation of registration and helps us link your responses to your broader profile in the community of practice. If you don't have it handy, that's okay. It's not a blocker to filling out the survey, but if you do, please enter it here to help us connect the dots more efficiently. Now, before we go any further, here's how the walkthrough will work. We're going to navigate the survey using the example of innovation procurement hubs and programs. This is the most complete version of the survey. It includes nearly all the question types and logic paths. So even if you're a different kind of stakeholder, you'll find the questions we explore here mirroring what you will encounter. And it's the best starting point to get familiar with how the survey works in an overall manner. You'll now specify the nature of your setup. You can pick from Innovation Procurement Hub, Incubator, Living Lab, Consortium-based, Hybrid Hub, or define something else in the free text box. This helps us understand your operational structure and later allows for more relevant peer matchmaking, especially in the peer learning program. Next, there are 3 straightforward but essential questions: your organization's full legal name, the date of the establishment of your organization, so the month and the year, and your main contact person. The survey will also request from you a secondary contact. And this is for the reason of redundancy or if another colleague will be involved in follow-up activities. This is where we understand your maturity level. You'll select from in early setup, developing, established, and scalable. You can also add your FTE size here, though this is an optional field. It helps us give a sense of your resourcing and could inform the kind of support your hub might need in the future. Moving forward, in this question, the headquarters of your company will be requested. Start by choosing from the drop-down list that covers all the countries within the European Economic Area. Then you will specify your operational scope. It can be either local, regional, national, cross-border, or EU-wide. Based on this answer, you'll see a conditional question. If you operate EU-wide or cross-border, you'll be asked to select all EEA countries where you're active. Instead, if you operate at a regional or a local level, you will be requested to type the specific geographical coverage. This helps us understand where the responding stakeholders are distributed and which countries or region may be underserved. Now, we get into one of the most important mapping questions. Which sectors you're active in? This survey presents a comprehensive and pre-group list of sectors including health and well-being, energy, environment and sustainability, mobility and smart transport, digital transformation and AI, education and skills development, urban development and infrastructure, security and defense, manufacturing and industry 4.0, public administration and policy innovation, and the option to specify another sector if not already existent in our breakdown. For each of these selected sectors, a conditional follow-up will appear, allowing you to specify the exact area of focus of your organization. This level of detail is what makes the final ecosystem mapping meaningful, searchable by theme, geography, and expertise. Moving on to the next question, it presents a multi-select list of core functions you may carry out as an innovation procurement hub. These range from strategic to operational activities and cover different phases of the innovation procurement lifecycle. You can select all that apply from the list. Each selected option opens up a follow-up block where you can specify what that activity involves. At this point, I would like to point out that throughout the survey, the word challenges refer to structured innovation procurement initiatives launched by public demand drivers to address societal issues by inviting startups, SMEs, and innovators to propose and develop solutions. So here you will be asked whether your organization has previously engaged in innovation procurement challenges and to specify the type, such as pre-commercial procurement, PCP, public procurement of innovation, PPI, or other models. In the dedicated box, please indicate the number and the type of challenges you have done. If you respond with anything other than "we do not launch innovation challenges," a follow-up question will appear asking how many of those challenges resulted in procurement contracts. Here you should provide the number of cases where procurement took place, whether directly after the challenge or via follow-up tendering process. This is a key metric as it reflects not just activity, but actual impact. For the remaining field in this section, if your organization has not launched any innovation challenges of the type, you should indicate that the value is 0 and proceed with the next question. Here you will be asked to select all relevant options regarding your funding sources, as this helps us understand sustainability patterns across different types of hubs. You will also need to specify the type of funding in the open text box provided. Moving on, we now shift from looking at your historical activity to understanding your current engagement in innovation procurement. In the previous questions, you were asked to indicate how many innovation challenges you had completed in the past. Now we want to understand whether you're actively engaging in these practices today. And please note that this does not need to be an ongoing project. Rather, we're interested in whether innovation procurement is currently an active part of your scope of operations. You'll be asked whether your organization is currently involved in PCP, PPI, or none of the above. Based on your response, the survey will open up a follow-up block. For instance, if you indicate involvement in PCP, you'll be asked to specify which stages of PCP you're engaged in and why you chose to use it. These insights are particularly valuable as they help us assess how and why innovation procurement is being applied today across the EEA, whether it's being used strategically, experimentally, or reactively. In the next section, you'll select from a predefined list of common issue categories and whether they are related to funding, supplier engagement, policy and governance, administration and procedures, operations, collaboration and ecosystem, legal and regulatory, or otherwise. Once you select one or more, the survey will once again open up follow-up questions tailored to each choice. In every follow-up, you'll have the opportunity to describe the specific nature of the issue your organization has faced. In the next section, you will be asked about your willingness to engage in the peer learning program that's being set by DG Grow and AISMEA. More specifically, we are designing the creation of a peer-to-peer learning platform where innovation procurement hubs can share best practices, mentor each other, and collaborate. This platform will help public authorities and hubs connect, learn from successful models, and improve their innovation procurement processes. You have the option to select whether you would be interested to participate in joint sessions and discussions, mentor by sharing your experience with others and what you have learned, host by organizing a virtual or physical exchange, or none of the above. This information will help us match you with peers, either to learn from successful examples and practices, or to act as a mentor or host supporting others in this knowledge-sharing effort. Ultimately, this exchange is a valuable opportunity to build a shared understanding of the standards, structures, and data that should underpin innovation procurement processes and framework across the EEA. Moving forward, you will be asked whether you use digital tools or platforms to manage procurement challenges. If yes, a conditional opens up asking which tools you use. Once again, you can either pick an option from the predefined list or type another response, and we encourage you to be as specific as possible. The following question asks what type of support or resources would help you scale or improve. This helps us prioritize the design and rollout of the support packages during the next phase of our program. Once again, each answer follows a more specific conditional option. Reaching the end of this survey, there are two optional questions that follow. Your entity's key competences that you have in-house across different areas, and the types of innovative solutions you have facilitated or seen being procured more frequently. Lastly, you can optionally refer us to other organizations or individuals who should be invited to fill out this survey. And that brings us to the end of this walkthrough. Thank you for following along. We hope this helped clarify what to expect and how to complete the survey confidently. If you haven't filled it out yet, now is a great time to do so. You can scan the QR code on screen or use the link that we're sharing right now in the chat. We would like to encourage you to fill out the survey until April 30th, and the sooner we receive your input, the sooner we can translate it into meaningful support, insights, and connections across the ecosystem. Remember, this survey isn't about the data. It's about building a community of practice that reflects your needs, your realities, and your ambitions. And with that, I'll hand it back to Yanis, who will guide us through the upcoming Q&A session.
Thank you, Fedra. So now is the time for you to ask questions, clarify details, share any thoughts you have with us. You can submit your questions and comments through the Q&A button on the screen, and you can do that also anonymously by checking the relevant tick box you will find there. We will cover as many questions as we can in the time we have. Any questions that we do not manage to answer today, we will make sure to document and come back with written responses as required in our community of practice. So we will be posting the questions and answers in all of them, both answered here and otherwise, in our community of practice. So you will find them there. So let's jump into the questions, and let me see. There is already one. Where is it possible to look up the public buyers community innovation procurement hubs entity code? Let me check. So I don't know if we can look at this right now, but we will find and we will create a guide with screenshots on where you need to go on the public buyers community, right? Where to check your organization's, your profile and your organization's profile, locate the code. We will provide the relevant screenshots so that you have a step-by-step process to do so. And you will then know exactly where to find it and how to put it in the survey. Again, this is something that is optional. You don't need to do it. I mean, if you find it very difficult to find this code, please do not spend too much time trying to figure it out. If you can, that would be great. It will help us. If you can't, that's okay. We will still try and make the connection between your profile in the community and your responses in the survey. So next question. Is it possible to select more than a primary sector? Now, okay, so this has two answers, and it depends on what you mean by sector. So if we're talking about sector in terms of the industrial focus, let's say, so if we're talking about whether you are active in healthcare procurement or in transport procurement, for example, you can select as many sectors as you like. If we're talking about the categories of your organization, the categories your organization fits in, you can't choose multiple. However, as we mentioned before, you can have people from different units or departments from your organization fill in the survey representing each of these roles that you may have. So, for example, if you are a public procurement agency that also acts as a competence center, that also acts as an incubator, you can have 3 different people fill in the survey, each one of them answering for the respective mandate and scope and activities that you're doing as a procurement agency, a competence center, or in innovation procurement hub. By the way, I don't know, Fedra, maybe we can go also to the survey to show a little bit what I mentioned before about the ability to select more than one sectors. Can we do that?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's go to the sectors. Okay, here we are in the sectors, and as you can see, you can select as many as you wish, with several conditional follow-ups opening up for each of them.
So if the question is about this part, you can select as many as applicable. And of course, for each one that you are selecting here, you will have the relevant conditional questions appear so that you can specify additional focus for each of the items you see here. All right, let's go to the next one. I do not have a question related to the survey, but I would like clarification on the difference between a competence center and innovation procurement hub. Okay, that's a great question. So competence centers we define as entities that have more of a guiding role rather than implementation role. So they are the custodians of all approaches, methodologies, perhaps tools, and make sure that the actors who are actually responsible for conducting innovation procurement, whoever those may be, are adequately trained and supported with the right tools, methodologies, and approaches to do so. Now, it might happen that you may be a competence center, but you also have an active role into conducting innovation procurement, in which case you are actually operating as an innovation procurement hub, plus also operating as I said, again, as a custodian of the whole framework, methodologies, tools, etc. In this case, you're having both roles, right? And that's why I said before, you may recognize your organization as having both accountabilities, in which case you either decide to fill in different survey responses for each of these roles, or you just say, okay, I do both. My primary focus is to actually conduct innovation procurement effectively. So you opt to fill in the survey as an innovation procurement hub. Okay. So next, as a scale-up of wearable robotics, which category would you recommend to allocate us for filling out the survey? And Fedra, do you have an input on this?
It depends what the question is about. Is it about the sector or in the
It's
stakeholder part?
it's about the sector. It's about the sector. So it says as a scale-up of wearable robotics. So it's sectoral.
In the wearable robotics, I think we should take this question offline to research a little bit more about what the company is doing. So we're 100% sure. But as a very quick answer, I'm thinking either digital transformation or something in manufacturing and Industry 4.0, but I will have to come back for this.
It depends on what the wearable robotics aim is about. So I would say if it's more about manufacturing, right? It would be manufacturing industry 4.0. If it's about digital transformation or more about consumers, customers, it would be digital transformation and AI,
I would
right?
also propose to open up the questions and try
Yeah.
reading the subcategories. Maybe this will
Yeah.
help because we also have some examples in each parenthesis. Maybe it's going to be helpful.
And by the way, this is not an issue for us. If you don't feel that any of these categories really match what your sectoral focus appears to be, you can always choose other and write it down. So if you are unsure, just opt for this. We will get back to you. We will have our own, let's say, read through an analysis of your responses to understand what you're doing. I will mention a little bit later the next steps after this survey, but we will get back to you to understand a little bit better what your focus is and what you're trying to achieve, right? So don't worry too much about this. If you can't find something that sounds like what you're doing, just pick other and let us know what you're doing. Okay, is it possible to receive the slides of the first part of the webinar? And will there be an email, phone contact for support? Yes, you will be able to, we will be uploading this presentation on our community of practice on the resources. So you will have direct access. We will also be uploading the recording for this session also so that you can watch it. And we will be also posting our mailbox, so our email address as a program later on before we finish this webinar. So you can send us an email, anything offline that you need to clarify, you will have the opportunity to do so. So yes, for all. The next question. The UK is included in the current DG RTD benchmarking study on policy and deployment of RTD. We have experience in developing IP hubs. How can we share our insights and be part of the best practice sharing? Now, this will have to take offline because the UK is a, let's say, a separate case. We will get back to this question in writing. I can see also your name here, so we will also make sure to answer to you via email, specifically through your registration, of course, and let you know about the answer on this. Does the public demand drivers category apply to policymakers who shape policy and establish systems, but are not directly involved in procuring innovation? The direct answer is yes. So as long as you are part of an organization that defines innovation priorities, that defines innovation procurement policy, that defines the strategy and the focus for innovation procurement, or essentially for any needs related to procurement in a country, then yes, you belong to the public demand drivers category. There is also another question that says there are many IP hubs that are focused in regions or cities. Where does the definition of local activity appear? Also, where there is special focus on SMEs and startups. So, two questions, therefore. The first one is, and we can go a little bit back, I think, Fedra, to show where we ask about the geographical reach. And Fedra, if you can give a little bit of an overview here.
Of course, this is just a matter of definition. So local versus regional, it's what does your organization cover? So local is usually a smaller part, regional is mostly a medium-sized part. It depends on how it's defined. I don't know if it makes sense.
Well, it's in region, of course, we're defining region as is defined in the European Union, right? So the
Exactly.
regions that are officially recognized, of course. Local is a level below that. So, for example, if we presented one example from the city of Amsterdam in our introductory webinar. So if you're part of a municipal authority that does innovation procurement, much like the example from the city of Amsterdam, you have to pick local, and then in the next question that says which local, can we pick local here, please? Okay, which local areas in the country do your activities cover? You will say the city of Amsterdam or the municipality of Amsterdam. If it's regional, then you have to write down the region or regions you are covering, because, for example, you may be covering more than one regions, but not the entire country. If it's national, you don't need to say anything, because we understand from your response that you're covering the country in which your organization is headquartered. That's why we ask specifically for your input on this. And there is a very specific reason why we're asking this, right? Because in some cases, we may have also public administrations that are either local, municipal, or regional, and they want to set up their own hub. But then it doesn't make much sense for us to get them into contact with successful examples, for example, that are cross-border or even that are national, because the nature of operations, the scale, the required capabilities, and the enablers that need to be in place for this to be successful are different. For example, one of the success factors, and I'm just saying an example here, for local innovation procurement hubs, for example, might be the connectivity to national policies or to national funding agencies, or, for example, to the collaboration, the availability of collaboration with other municipal or local hubs, which might not be the same, or it might not be similar to the success factors for national or even for cross-border entities, right? So we want to be able to match replicable models based also on the geographical reach. That's why we are asking this. Now, the second question is about the special focus on SMEs and startups. Of course, one of the aims of the project is of the program, the Innovation Procurement Hubs program, is to enable better accessibility of SMEs and startups to these innovation procurement challenges. So to public procurement focused on innovation. Why? Because of course, a lot of the most innovative companies are startups. We do not specify this as a main focus for the buyer side, because doing so might disrupt the level playing field. Of course, we understand that there are issues in public procurement today that may create a bias against SMEs and startups. So implicitly, we recognize that this is an issue, right? For example, if you're doing innovation procurement with criteria for evaluation that focus on financial and operational stability and scale, by definition, this will create a bias towards more established, larger corporates rather than SMEs and startups. If you maintain a framework of requirements for the tenders that is overly bureaucratic and complex, and requiring resources to participate that SMEs and startups do not have, this is something that we want to know from your inputs, but it's also something that we know is out there, and we will also try to address, because one of the points of and aims of this program is to enhance market access for and market engagement for public administrations and increase the supplier pool. So increasing the supplier pool by definition means also including more suppliers, especially from the SME and startups space, right? But we do not want to focus only on that, because that's not the whole point. We want to make innovation procurement accessible to suppliers across the entire spectrum. And since corporates already have that access, that means creating a level playing field that includes SMEs and startups. Okay? I think that is all, and I think we are right on time. Of course, if you have any other questions, let us know, and we will address them also offline. So for the time being, thank you for all your questions. We really appreciate the engagement and the insights you've shared. We will be posting the recording, as I said before, of this webinar in the Innovation Procurement Hubs community of practice, where you will be able to access it on demand, along with a transcript of the questions and answers provided. And if you have any other questions that you share offline with us, don't worry, we will include them along with the relevant answers in our community post. We will also email you directly with the specific answer, with the specific question and the specific response that you share with us offline. Now, as we wrap up the session, I would like to once again ask you to fill in the survey and to share it with others that might find it useful and relevant. Your insights are going to shape the direction of this program, and the survey is only the beginning of our interaction along this path. We will continue engaging with you through one-to-one interviews, with workshops, with community discussions based on your inputs to hone our support packages further. We have already started deep dive interviews with 11 organizations from, I think, 5 or more different EU countries, which have completed the survey. So please complete it, and trust me, we will reach back to you to get more nuance and understand where you are coming from, what you're challenged with. If you're not already a member of our community of practice, make sure to join to make the most of this opportunity and get access to all the resources we have referenced here. The more people involved, the stronger our collective impact. You can scan the QR code on your screens to fill in the survey and join the community of practice, or you can use the link in the chat. Click it now. It only takes 30 seconds to sign up in our community of practice. You can also reach out directly with any additional questions or requests to the email address we've also posted in the chat. There was a question before. You can check the email address in the chat to reach out to us directly. And with that, I would like to thank you once again for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.